Could I please get a motion to approve the minutes of March 22nd? Supervisor Montesi, second by Supervisor Strow. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, who, does Ed want to...
We're ready to go.
Go along, yeah?
We're ready to go. I'm just going to pass out. Can you pass that down there?
Sure.
All right, get you there. I should have over here a little. This is a summary of some of the activities and updates, and I'm going to be emailing you one this morning. Here. Okay. One of the things that we have been working on a regular basis with John Whitley attends the meetings at the town of Queensbury. Supervisor John and Chazen have been undertaking with the effort of the redeveloping the Ciba-Geigy site. There was a application that was due on April 7th. EDC supported the application of the town of Queensbury for additional funding to identify further development. And secondly, the EDC did support the city's effort in expanding their Warren Street BOA, which they had not undertaken any activity as yet. And so they are looking to expand that, and down the road, perhaps, at some point, there might be some sense to look at both a joint application for the next step, John, between the city and the town of Queensbury, between SEBA and so forth. In that regard there. I've given you a couple of pictures here to see. This is an amazing picture of the former Ciba-Geigy site when it was occupied. And you can see the number of buildings and so forth. The area at the top of the picture is the area that is principally the contaminated area extensively on the on the western portion of that piece of property there. But that's a picture, and then if you look down here, through the magic of our drones by Peter and Joe Pate, you can see the property as it is at this present time. And if you go to the Queensbury website, South Queensbury Vision Plan, John, you will be able to see a lot of details on what the town is proposing to work with the company on. Secondly, as I've mentioned before, our first-time home buyers program that EDC is administering undertook the application, and we expanded the application this past year to include 5 slots for properties outside Glens Falls, 10 within the city. This is the first time that under the city program that's been extended, a total of 15, and I can report that our first closing that occurred last Monday was with a constituent in the town of Thurman that has purchased a home there. So we have 4 remaining slots and 10 remaining in the city, although we're up to now 12 different individuals that have been approved for this program. One of the changes was that wherever the property is located, the importance of a code compliant, and therefore John Ward from the city is not eligible to do code in the rest of the towns. So working with the administrator, chair, and county attorney, we've reached an agreement with Mr. Wallace that he will be has done those inspections for a fee, and we appreciate the cooperation of Warren County in getting these permits done. And as you can see, this is an income-based program, and I put in our documents this morning here the various levels of income. So with a family of 1, the maximum income in order to be eligible for this program, which you would receive $20,000 to buy a portion of the purchase price, is $36,300. Family of 5 is $56,000. So what happens is that we qualify the individual, we direct them to go out and get pre-qualified from a bank, lending institution, credit union, or a mortgage company, and then they're able to go out and look for a home. The home cannot be over $176,000. So it's a good program. We want to be able to, we have a year left under the program, so when we're successful in getting all 15 done by next June, closings, we hope to be able to expand the program from the $300,000 level and try to at least double that so that we can get more of the residents in the city and within the county to participate in the program.
How many applicants do you have?
Applicants right now, we probably got 35 applicants.
So you can make the 15?
We can, yes. Well, that's the easy part, is qualifying the individuals. They have to then go out and purchase the home and make sure they've got a mortgage and close within 15 days. Frank, did you get a copy? You don't have to close. And doing 15 closings in a year, yes.
$20,000, that's what you get?
Yes, up to $20,000. If your income is bordering right on the top end of 36.3,
Yeah.
depending on the amount of the mortgage you obtain from a local bank and the purchase price, it's a formula, you may not get exactly $20,000. It's up to 20. Most people read that when they say up to,
Okay.
it's 20, but it's less. We're probably going to hover around the $18,000 to $20,000 mark. It's a grant. You have to reside in the house for 5 years. It's a lien on the property. If you leave before the 5 years, there's a repayment on that. And again, this is not a speculation type of a program or a flip program. This is intended for a person that is looking to have a residence in there. So that was wonderful to be able to get the cooperation and get Mr. Wallace out there. And on the first home, he just lived right around the corner from the property, so he didn't have too far to go. But it was 2 inspections. He had to go up and inspect, and there were certain things that were not in compliance, like no railings up to the 2nd floor and down. Peter, you're aware of all those conditions. And we got all that taken care of when we closed last week. The last 2 Fridays have been pretty enthusiastic in our region, having both U.S. Senators, Senator Schumer on the 14th of April visited the Glens Falls Hospital, and last Friday Senator Gillibrand was there, and also Senator Little at the Children's Awareness Museum for concerns over the funding, lack of funding. And again, I was trying to remember and recall if we've ever had 2 U.S. senators in that short period of time in the city, and I don't think we've had in the region to do there. So that shows that our region is on the map, and also to indicate I think both senators are very supportive of our region and Warren County. The next interesting thing, I put it together because it involves a little bit, and I don't expect everybody to read all through this, but the last data that just was released last week by the Department of Labor showed an increase in the employment for, when they say Glens Falls, that is the metropolitan area, which means Warren County, Washington County, and northern Saratoga. So that's what that data means, that there was an increase of 2.6 in jobs, increase in jobs from last year at this particular time, and actually led the areas outside of the metropolitan New York City area. If you look at page 2, 2 areas that continue to not do well is Elmira and the Rochester area. Now, that's the first question. Okay, we gained some jobs. What type of jobs are we gaining? We are gaining some jobs in the healthcare service area is our principal area, although some increase in the professional business areas and in the government as well. At the bottom of the page there, and I put in red, the other red was positive, this red is a negative, is the loss of manufacturing jobs in New York State continues to a loss from a year ago to now is 13,500 jobs. And so that is, again, something that we at EDC are focusing on. When Chuck Barton stepped down from the EDC board at Barton's, we felt it was important to have him replaced with another representative we've nominated, and he's accepted Derek Basil from Finch Paper. Again, Finch Paper is a key manufacturing element in our area. We are looking at several efforts to increase our manufacturing. I think in coming days you'll see some positive news coming out of the medical device firm in our area. Finch Paper, if they're successful with their paper residual project of converting sludge into other byproducts, you'll see a tick up in jobs there, but that's insignificant what we have to do. And that's why one of the things that we are working on with all of the towns along the Northway and off the Northway is undertaking conversations with them. We're going to be Thursday in the town of Chester with Craig and the planning group and others to talk about what type of development they specifically would like to see developed, subject to code, subject to property confinements and things like this, along the Northway, so that we, when we're working with Empire State Development, when we get inquiries, we have an outline through some GIS data that will show the respective uses that we would like to see developed from exit 26 down to exit 18. And we're also working with the town of Queensbury on refining some of their mapping with Mr. Hilton from Queensbury's GIS, the supervisor, and others in the town there too. So that kind of ties into our effort of better increase in our manufacturing. And at the bottom of the next page, I just indicated that our second EPA job training grant has been approved. Our first class will be this fall. We usually have about 30 to 40 people in the class. About 100 people will be trained over the 3 sessions over the next year. The trainings will be held at Local 773, the plumbers and steam fitters, and the program runs from the mandatory environmental requirements such as the 40-hour HAZWOPER course to confined space to others as well. And as I just highlighted what we're doing on the Northway 87 development, I've just indicated our first meeting will be in Chester, and then on the next page is the mapping of our exits. John in Queensbury is doing pretty well in filling up exit 18 west of the Northway. But there's more room, and with the added sewer, that really helps the growth in that particular area. And then on the next page is a GIS map that we are working with what we will be talking about with Chester. Not only Chester, Pottersville included within the town of Chester. And then is Matt coming over from Horicon?
He's got another meeting up north.
Okay, all right.
Otherwise he would be there.
We'll catch him.
Yep.
Obviously, that's a major component coming off the Northway as well, is the Brant Lake area and Adirondack up on the bottom there of Scroon Lake. So we're going to be working there at 2526, coming southward and then going northward, so that all of the communities, as well as those that are not immediately adjacent to the Northway, to talk to Stony Creek and others to see what potential areas they would like to see us, because the majority of our inquiries for industrial manufacturing development come from Empire State Development, and it's an email. And you essentially have 5 days to respond, and they will give a very brief introduction as to whether or not the area is eligible. So at this present time, we really don't have a fully done analysis of the lands that are available beginning at 26 down. In Queensbury, we pretty well know what is being developed there. So we want to be able to do that so that we can respond. If somebody is looking for a wood pellet industry, we know that there is land. We already know that. The town of Chester has identified and worked with Peckham's for an industrial park up by Etain. Exit 25 has some lands that we're going to be working with Kevin and the planning board. Exit 24, the same, and again, is subject to some APA requirements. And again, so that if we get an inquiry on land that they want in the northern part of our county, but it is for a use that is not deemed acceptable by the town. We're just not going to, pursue that. It's really, we view this as a local control issue, but we need to know the capacity of telecommunication, what utilities are there, is there three-phase power running by National Grid in those areas. Right now, we do not have that data available collectively, and we hope to get that and then map it. So all of that would be passed on to the county planning, to the town planning, and to the town supervisors, and we'll have a copy of that information. So that's what one of our key projects that we're going to be working on, collectively as we go forward there. This week, the governor is making two announcements. The downtown revitalization funds for round 2. City is not eligible, unfortunately, for another round, but the CFA, the consolidation funding applications, will be announced this week with a target of applications being acceptable from early May until the mid part of July. So what we did last year, and we'll continue to do that, is we worked with several applicants and met with the applicants both from the municipal side and the public sector side in terms of their interest in an application. We've identified approximately 13 projects without the multitude of projects that Wayne is going to put forth under the first wilderness area. So we'll probably end up and have a snapshot of maybe 20 to 25 projects to look at. And again, these are grants, but the key that sometimes is overlooked is that the grant program represents about 20% for the private sector. So one of Peter's clients reads that so-and-so got, $1 million, $2 million, and says, how come, Peter, you can't get that for me? Well, the reality is that person has got to have an 80%, commitment of, funding, or close, nearby, and the plan has got to be ready to go. With this. So that's part of the process that we're doing, is an explanation, an understanding of what the CFA, process is. And then finally, as I mentioned just earlier, we had nominated and Derek has accepted EDC to be our newest board member, replacing Chuck Barton. So that's a rundown of some of the information.
Thank you, Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, Ed, you're doing a great job, I really believe that. This is just a bigger picture question. I look at the data, we're down 13,100.
Not in Warren County, New York State.
No, let me finish, I know. In the state, we're down 13,100 jobs in manufacturing sector, which to me is very troubling, very scary. And we lead the nation, most people moving out, we all know that. We get the worst business report card in the country.
I'm not sure that that's totally accurate, Doug, that
Well,
we're the number one. I think we may be 2 or 3, but it's still, it's
We're
still
number 2. That
trending in the wrong,
the second
trending in the wrong
second
direction.
worst in the country,
Right.
sorry. If we're not number 1, we're number 2 in that. But that's still very troubling, being the second worst. So, I guess my question to you is, and this is a bigger picture, what would you do, or what do you see as some of these solutions? We're the highest tax state in the nation. What do you see as some of the solutions to get outside of the state companies to move in?
Well, I think that it's a very difficult issue because there are international aspects that affects New York State economy. New York State has attempting through the tax cap to reduce your real property tax,
Which we still lead the nation.
which still, but it continues. There's a cap in that, and further, the governor is pushing, consolidation of government units, of school districts, of even fire districts, in order to keep down the cost. And the third point is that we have to do more in attraction. We have to do a better job, in my opinion, with the job training aspect of recruitment. We bring a new industry in, the first question they ask when we're talking with them, what is the capacity of your job training programs in the area? What can we do about that? And one of the things that we're working on is that it used to be that we would be able to access job training funds around the clock, around the year. Now we have to wait through the CFA process. So whether we're talking about 15 people that are looking to be retrained with new software, new computers, new training. The shift over to automation is greatly taking place, that we have to be prepared to work with those industries. But I can say that in our cluster area, our cluster of economic development growth starts with the paper industry is still viable in Warren County and in New York State. Finch Paper has been very successful in modernizing their facility. They're currently at 650 employees, which is very strong. They're one of the last remaining integrated paper mills in the country. They have developed a very good niche of specialty papers. They're relatively small in comparison of going up to Ticonderoga with International Paper, which is another integrated paper mill that does specialty papers as well. So I think that working, government is not the answer for everything. You've got to be able to work with the private sector, and Finch Paper has demonstrated that with their CEO, Deba, in coming up with this new, wood yard. They only looked at that for 40 years, and current management was able to figure that out on how to get a better work yard, have an automation. In the past, all the logs would come in and just be dumped in a pile, kind of like my office and my paperwork. But they then went into tumblers, and they would run those tumblers on the logs in the anticipation that the bark would break off. They opened the tumbler, and some of the logs that came out were like that, and others came out like that. And that's how they operated that. They also had the requirement of the tumblers only could take 4-foot logs, which is not the standard. So what they did is, one, they went to an 8-foot log. They've automated the system now that goes onto a conveyor belt, and then it's surgically cut by paper machines. That work was done, and that's to spin off our electric. Roselle did a lot of the work on that facility. And they've invested $20 million in the last couple of years in modernization. This new paper residual is another effort to take a byproduct of the company, instead of putting it over in the landfill in Northumberland, and make some use out of it, a byproduct. So we have to work with, we identify those industries that are in our area. The bulk of our new jobs comes from retention and expansion. So that's one area. A second area that we need to continue to focus on is the medical device industry in our area, which remains strong with C.R. Bard, with AngioDynamics, Precision Extrusion, which was just acquired by a New Jersey company because of the profit and because of their productivity. And Bates, which has also been acquired locally in South Glens Falls. So those are key. AngioDynamics and C.R. Bard are daily trying to do research. I think as I said, you'll see an uptick of about 25, 30 jobs that are coming to one of those medical device companies very shortly. They're closing down a plant in Georgia. That's the state of Georgia, Mr. Beatty, and also Scotland. So that's a positive. And again, that's not putting this in a rose-colored area. It's just that you've got to take these industries, and from my perspective, and what I do, case by case. The tourism industry is another one, and the Board of Supervisors has been attempting to, and is addressing that issue of how more effective we can be with all of the dollars that you spend on tourism to increase the tourism, as well as looking at new events that can come into Warren County to bring new people. A couple of examples of that. One has been, over the years, the Balloon Festival, obviously, Americade, but we need to do more than those facilities in order to get our occupancy tax up. One has been the Film Festival that came to Glens Falls last year. The majority of those people came from outside the area. As much as some people, complain about the alternative motorcycle rally up in Warrensburg, that's brought even more people into our area. I think we need to focus, which I think the tourism department, which has more expertise than I in it, which we look at what the millennials want to do, and that's hiking, fishing, they want to boat, biking, they want to do those kind of things, as well as going to see the Six Flags. I mean, Six Flags, between Six Flags and the indoor water park, their probably attendance was between 750 and 1 million. Last year. Also, there's a possibility that there may be on the horizon an additional small but interesting amusement park that might be developing in Warrensburg. So we've got to continue to do that. Going to Chester is our area to make sure that there are facilities there. If we do get an inquiry, we can put that on our yes map for us to say, you know, in the town of Chester, there are these facilities, properties that are available for jobs. You know, if each of us in each county tries and works at uplifting us, we then need to look to Albany. We need to look to the federal government to provide some assistance. EDA, which has been proposed to be abolished since Ronald Reagan days, always stays in there because it's a very positive, you know, program. But every day, we're talking with inquiry. So what we need is better job training in our area. Another thing is that we need to have a better ability for investments, opportunities. Banks are successful because they're rather conservative in loaning their monies. You cannot bring in an individual that's looking for an innovative helmet, if you will, without getting some kind of monies outside our area or within our area as kind of investment opportunities. And that's an area where we need to do better on.
Just one final comment. Again, I think you're doing a great job up here in Warren County and so forth. I've been, and I agree with your retention and expansion of existing businesses. I think that's the way to go. Obviously, we have a county that's losing population or flat, you know, and so that's where I'm coming from. And this isn't a question, but the fact that the state loses population, and especially upstate New York, okay, and we're not attracting in new businesses because I've heard repeatedly, because of the cost of doing business in New York State, i.e. the regulations and the taxes, makes it cost prohibitive to really move in new companies. So I agree that what we've got to do is expand and retain our current business structure, and because we don't have that other option. That's what's very concerning to me, is we are least favorable of moving a company from another part of the country into New York State for most examples. So
one thing I haven't heard said though is that we have, I think, an opportunity to bring young people who are looking for, you know, that access to the Adirondacks, the ability to get right there and have a community sense like we have in downtown Glens Falls. We're working on that. And to be able to do, you know, they might not have 650 employees, but they may employ 5 people.
We do site visitations.
With web-based
yeah.
businesses, innovative, smaller widget type things. We need to keep our eyes open for those too.
Well,
Not just the gigantic paper.
You realize
dynamics, which
thousands and
I agree
thousands
we
of
need to
communities in the
reach.
country are looking to do that. So one of the best ways to do that is through the supply chain is another area that we can bring in new businesses. And that was done a few years ago by Finch Paper in bringing in a supplier near them. It's similar to what you've seen with Exit 16 develop with Ace Target developing. Is why do they come up into Exit 16? It's not because they like Wilton necessarily, it's because that they're near their home base of getting distribution products. It's like Walmart is building another huge square footage building out in the Johnstown, Fultonville area. So one of the things that we are working with is the various industries and businesses that here to see what are their top vendor suppliers that they depend on and what the costs are, and is there any interest by those particular vendors, suppliers, to move closer to one of their bigger products. They moved closer, they moved into the Albany area for Finch because Finch is one of the bigger customers. So we're identifying those businesses in Warren County right now. But one of the things that has to happen is further planning by the respective communities. And that's why it's important that Craig has assembled the residents of Chester and himself, and looking at Horicon to develop areas of where we can have potential, development. When we get a call and they're looking in the upstate area, right now we're rather limited on our resources. The day that we had a wood pellet company here a couple of years ago in Warrensburg, Kevin and I were actually on the phone with one of the protective owners of the property, wondering whether or not he was interested in selling the property. So we got to do better in that, and that's what we really need, so that we have a litany of those. We also have the majority of new people that are living downtown are millennials, and they are moved in from the area, not Queensbury, not from this area, but they are moved up and may have a job at Global, they may have a job in Albany, or they may have a job in the Glens Falls area.
Out of their house.
Yes, or out of their house, that's right.
That's the point I'm trying to make, and maybe they would create a small little business and that.
Right,
continue.
there's a
Well,
growing
we gotta
trend,
encourage
there's a
that.
growing trend to, do that.
Great, thank you very much. Interesting discussion. We are substantially behind, so I appreciate the global questions, Supervisor Beatty. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn? Supervisor Sokol, second by Supervisor Stroud. Thank you.
Now we're into LDC.
We are into LDC, if we can just jump into it, please.
At the house, the date.